Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Ascension Playground. This is your friend Ursie, and today is part 2 for looking at the major arcana card called the High Priestess. Now, what's coming up for me today is this idea of how language offers us parameters for what is it that we're talking about energetically, right? So when we say the High Priestess, what does that mean today in 2023? This idea of priest and priestess, her equal and opposite, according to the cards, would perhaps be the Hierophant or the Pope. The High Priestess used to be called the Popess. But today I'm tuning into these words, the High Priestess. And what comes up for me is this idea of the feminine aspect that moves and connects into the celestial realms, into the heavens. This energy is available to each of us. And if you follow Theresa Bullard on GaiaTV with the Secret Mystery Schools of the Tarot, she suggests that each of the 22 major arcana connect to 22 multidimensional pathways of our beingness. Okay, so not just this earthly lifetime, not just this parallel lifetime, but this idea of a composite, perhaps a hologram of experiences, 22 pathways for our soul to find a way to engage, to learn from, and therefore then expand in awareness. Okay, so let's go tune into this High Priestess. And how does she connect, if at all, to the galactic? Is there a galactic connection to the High Priestess? So here we go. So, opening up this idea of, is there a connection? Because if you put aside the labels and the boxes of our beliefs or the boxes of even our languaging and just tune into the vibration of energy, right? Is there something within the 22 major arcana, the High Priestess card, that also connects to stories of our galactic heritage? So let us begin. Love the idea of 22 being the numerology for the builder. Kind of think, well, our soul is building its awareness, our soul is building towards a greater sense of evolution, only then to start again, right? And have the next level of awareness beyond the 22. So we're opening up this tarot, just the major arcana, not the other cards in the deck. That has to do more with the mundane, earthly time cycle. The 22 major arcana versus the minor arcana really speak to this idea, where are the biggest secrets, the biggest mysteries held, let's say in plain sight, but through the picture book, right? How do you decipher the codes? So we open up and we call open this picture book of wisdom, the tarot. Here she comes. Here's the High Priestess card. This is the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Okay, this one seems to hold a foundational energy. I know there's many different tarot decks. There's the Egyptian with Thoth. There's other variations. Early on, the Florentine deck, the Italian deck, the French deck. But the one that's calling me in this now moment as foundation, right? There's so many other derivations of the tarot, but it's the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Okay, so I'm creating this intuitive bridge. Let's play on the playground with this idea of, does Sirius A, this beautiful, brightest star of the heavens, does it connect with the divine feminine held within the High Priestess card? When you just take a look at this, look at, she's holding on to knowledge in her lap, the Torah, right? And she has pomegranates, this idea of the one who can create from her cosmic womb. She can bring life forward, many potential seeds within the pomegranate, also connecting to the idea of death. Death and rebirth through the feminine portal. Okay, so the High Priestess. So, what is it about Sirius? There is a Sirius A star, a B, a C. We're really speaking about a star system, an asterism held within the constellation of Canis Major, the large dog up in the heavens. So, this is the brightest star in the Canis Major constellation called Sirius. Sirius A. All right, so I just wanted to start here and go, okay, we're bridging now into the galactic. This idea of a multi-dimensional beingness for each of us. For some of us, it may be coming online faster, and we're hearing things, seeing things, dreaming, knowing things that, let's just say, even 5 years ago, we had no clue. There's an energetic opportunity here. And so by going back into the tarot and focusing on these major arcana cards, let's have the journey begin. So at the very top, put these in a mandala. The very top, the Fool enters, right? The first card, actually the 0 card in the first placement on the mandala. The Fool is new beginnings, limitless potential. It is like the light of of just the beginner's mind, the beginner's heart. Here I am. Think of the child, right? And isn't it interesting that in the messages of Jesus Christ, saying that for you to want to enter the kingdom of heaven is as a child, right? So this idea of playing on a playground, beginning with the Fool's card. Next, then we went to the Magician. This is the solar energetic light of the masculine principle that says, with an infinity sign of energy above, I can create through alchemy. I can take earth, wind, fire, ether together and manifest into this third dimension. Then, so we've got the divine child, the Fool, the archetypal divine masculine. And now here comes the divine feminine, the High Priestess. Let's see what she has to say. I'd like to talk to you about this idea of it's not just masculine versus feminine, but it's this idea of an axis of, wow, potential, the two ends of the spectrum. And instead of the fight being a tug of war, a third party, an apex can be created, what we call the divine child. So we have the priestess, the magician, and the divine child. And I got to say, I love that little dog at the Fool's feet saying, hey, let's go have fun. That innocence of let's go play. We don't know any better. We're just here. We're showing up. And the yin yang in the center of this triad is to remind us it is neither this or that, it is all. Okay. So, in some ways, it's learning how to speak with it is neither good nor bad, it just is. This idea of moving out of this idea of the judgment of polarization and duality. Why? So maybe we could then step into this other greater awareness of a cosmic dance, a cosmic game. Like, really, is that what it's all been about? How to let go of the duality and the warring of the tug of war. Okay, so here's the High Priestess. I've spoken a little bit earlier on a previous insight on the priestess. And let me just take a quick peek here. Yep, there we go. So her Hebrew letter is Gimel, and the celestial body that is associated with the High Priestess is the moon. The moon is not a planet. It is an orbiting um, astral body that is orbiting the earth, not the sun, but the earth is going around and orbiting the sun. So yes, High Priestess in other earlier card decks was called the Popess, the female questioner, and even this card represented the gate of the occult sanctuary. So don't worry about feeling nervous about that word occult. It really just means hidden mysteries. Okay, sometimes we get a little nervous about what's in the dark. Okay, so in the deck, yes, Selene, the goddess of the moon, is connected to this card, the High Priestess. So if we just say, thank you, Selene, come in and join me on this timeline, help me navigate with the High Priestess to understand its fuller meaning. And so I sensed we're not alone in the heavens. It's not just this solar system. Who else, what else is connecting us to the High Priestess Major Arcana card? And before I go there, look at this picture of the moon and her various cycles. Notice I used the word her, meaning the equivalent of the feminine principle, introspective, internal. She carries the baby within her, not outside, but within. She is reflected light. In other words, she doesn't transmit or emit her own light, but she is basically like a mirror reflecting others' light. Very different than the sun, which is all about emanation, emanation. This is about reflection. All right. So we can again only see one side of the moon as we're sitting here on Earth. It's like, why is that? Why isn't the moon spinning on its axis as well? So it's just this very interesting thing about this moon always showing its same face, right? So energetically, there is symbolism there, always consistently showing us the same face, though the face diminishes and then comes to black and then opens again, right? So here is the metaphor for the moon, the hidden, the new beginning dark moon, and then opening to her four quarters, right? To the full moon. So there are cycles within the moon connected to the High Priestess. All right. So if we ever think that we're going to live in a world, let's say, that's always flat, everything's always good, 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 positive, positive, where would the growth be? The moon reminds us, like the tides that she rules, that yes, the tide goes in and it goes out. There are these, like almost like a sine wave, up and down, in and out. This is the beautiful knowledge coming through the High Priestess who is connected to the moon. Yes, and since our bodies are mostly made of water and we are living on a water planet, the moon plays a pivotal role. It is so connected. It is really here just for us, just for Mother Earth, right? So very different where the sun shines its light out to other bodies, right? Our moon is just for us. So it's very interesting to look at the contrast with solar light and lunar light, reflected light. And then, of course, that number 13, representing numerologically the feminine principle. I know that the Mary Magdalene's number in numerology is 153. So the 1 and the 3 hold a 5 in the center. Very interesting if you like the work of William Henry, who's tracking ancient stuff like numerology plus so much more. Okay, so 13 moons in a lunar year. Here we go. Moving now, here's where we go galactic. Okay, the High Priestess. This image next to my head is an image of Isis. How do we know? Well, we see she's feminine. She's holding the Ankh, the key of life, in her left receptive feminine hand, and the masculine hand is coming outward to receive. But on the top of her head looks to be like a starfish. It's really a 5-pointed star. This star, when you look into Egyptian mythology, is representative of the star Sirius A, the brightest star in the heavens. So if you think about it, go back 2,000, 3,000 years ago to the beautiful Nile River area in Egypt, and you think about how that society was so dependent on the Nile, the water of life. When it would flood, they would wait for it, right? And they'd look to the heavens because they knew that when the star Sirius rose, the Nile would flood. Why is that important? We would ask today. This was before agricultural, like sprinkler systems, irrigation systems. So they had to kind of work with the heavenly bodies to understand, are we getting ready for when the Nile will flood? Will it flood this year? If it doesn't flood, how are we going to survive? Because so much was tied through this agrarian community to the idea of water. Okay, so see, we have the connection to the moon and Sirius A star and the divine feminine. It's all feminine. So the flooding of the Nile equals life. And that five-pointed star, right? It's interesting. The number five and its connection also to Venus and the pathway around the sun that Venus and the earth make actually geometrically into a five-pointed star with its beautiful pathway. All right, so here we go again. I'm placing now an image, an icon of Isis, the feminine winged one. So she's emanating these wings, these rays of light, the mystery schools of balance. The feminine was not below the masculine. The feminine worked with the masculine. Think of the beautiful divine honeybee. It's the queen bee working within the hive. So, this beautiful archetypal divine feminine, for anyone listening who is still trying to sort through, their upbringing and perhaps mother issues, if you're able to set that aside for a minute and look archetypally at this idea of calling in the divine feminine, the powerful creator, the one that holds within life and births it forward. Our civilizations would die without this beautiful womb, the mother principle. Isis, for some of you who are new to her as a divine feminine archetype, she is the embodiment of, yes, the sacred mother. She also carries the cow principle. Think of the cow, the giver of milk. The cow gives of its full self. It's meat, it's food, it's as meat as food, and its hide is warmth for us, but it's milk that nurtures and nourishes us, creating cheese and other things. So, yes, also, Isis and the High Priestess could also be looked at calling in the sky, the night sky. Okay, so we have the sun, the solar light, the cosmos. We're looking at the divine feminine as the equal and opposite, the night sky, the heavenly realms. Went a little bit further, and I just want to show you this is again that triad of here's now Isis above me with her lunar, she's got the moon sitting within two cow horns above her with the wings of angels for astral flight. And then you have her beloved Osiris, her equal and opposite, that she brought back from earthly death into a multidimensional state where together they birthed Horus, their divine child, which is represented in Egyptian glyph as that eye, the all-seeing eye. Well, I just thought I heard a little. Okay, so bringing this now back to the tree of life. Here we see that triad again, right? From the first Sephiroth to the second to the third. Look how from the crown, the masculine energy of the magician moves to the third Bina, and then from the crown goes into Chokmah, wisdom. So together, the child carrying the beginning, the crown, Bina, understanding of the feminine, and Chokmah, wisdom with the masculine. The pathway for the high priestess is between Sephiroths 2 and 3. It is this lateral movement. It's a pathway from understanding to wisdom and wisdom to greater understanding. So see how it's held so beautifully. If you have this pathway as a birth card in Tarot, sit and tune into that, the high priestess and the magician. just here's a visual for you to bring that image a little bit more into the frontal lobe of consciousness. Yes, the positive side is male, yang energy, feminine, yin, lunar, solar, day, night. Here's an interesting thing though, right? If I shared with you, yes, our moon orbits Earth, and then the Earth orbits the sun, making it a planet, right? Planet Earth. But whom does the sun orbit? And you think about it, the sun is orbiting within the Milky Way galaxy, and everything in the Milky Way galaxy is orbiting the galactic center. Interesting, right? So you've got this balancing of energy. Who are you orbiting? And so the masculine connecting to that galactic center and the Milky Way, and then the feminine bringing that energy more closely down to earth through the reflective light of the moon. Do you see how they work together? They're not the same. It's almost like this dovetailing support system to help the divine child have this beautiful journey in life. Okay, if you want a new word for the day, here's one: archaeoastronomy. Now, I just put the hyphen in between archeo and astronomy, but you can just write out archaeoastronomy. So, what is it? It's this idea of researchers tracking ancient temple sites, ancient sites, let's say, and seeing if there's a connection to the celestial realms. So, specific doorways, temple doorways, were basically placed to basically say, this time of year, we will greet, let's say, Cygnus, the swan constellation. Here she comes. So the whole temple, let's say, would be focused on Isis or that Cygnus the swan coming back and greeting us during certain times of the year. All right. So, this idea of how the sky and earth connect. And interesting how I just shared this idea of the sun orbiting the galactic center while the moon orbits the earth, and they connect together. Here's an interesting diagram in case you haven't seen it. I just grabbed this off of a Google search. But here's the Great Pyramid of Egypt. All right, we're back to that triad sitting in Giza, Egypt, right? It's one of the three. They call it the Great Pyramid. And in it, there's a queen's chamber and a king's chamber. So the queen's chamber sits below the king's chamber, and I put a little pink circle around the queen's chamber. Well, wouldn't you know, there is a shaft of light that is specifically reaching out to Sirius from the queen's chamber. This was just for me an underscore of, okay, I think we're onto something here. When we look at what is the galactic connection with the High Priestess, who is like, when you think of the strongest divine archetypal principle that we know, Isis is certainly, for me, the strongest one, right? Yes, there's Hathor, but Hathor will come into the equation later. We'll be looking at her with the Empress. But here comes Isis and her connection to Sirius. And if you look in the Egyptian mythology, you'll see this connection between Isis and Sirius, the divine feminine star principle, right? And though she does have another shaft of light, then connecting her to Beta Ursa Minor, a star called Kochab or Kochab. Anyway, it's not the pole star, right? It's the secondary, the beta star of Ursa Minor in the constellation. So here's a queen's chamber saying, I'm pointing to Sirius and I'm pointing to Kochab. Interesting, right? Whereas in the king's chamber, I'm pointing to Alnatak on Orion's belt, the Orion constellation, and my other shaft of light is pointing to none other than Alpha Draconis. Don't want to get too deep on that one just yet, but here we are with the beautiful energy of the divine High Priestess. Here's a Syrian seal that I found in a Google image search. Love this. I just feel energetically that whoever created this seal or brought this glyph back for awareness is spot on. I see those little, they almost look like Fibonacci spirals of energy, right? There's three of them cascading down the pyramid in a flat three-dimensional form. The Syrian seal, again connecting us to the Great Pyramid at Giza, perhaps. Interesting. Then there's a beautiful artist named Vashta, and she's created some images of art. And these are her interpretations visually of what does a Syrian star person look like, or a Syrian look like, galactically. So this idea of keen intelligence, a larger head, a bigger forehead, perhaps, a connection to sacred geometry. So we can look at this as holding more of the divine feminine principle. I personally thought geometry, because its linearity is focused more on the masculine, and perhaps there is this dovetailing of both, Sirius A and B and C coming together, A, B, and C. So in a previous YouTube, I shared on the magician this connection that I thought the magician was connected to Sirius B, a smaller water planet within the constellation. So the smaller masculine with the larger feminine. And the more you study energy, scale and size at certain occasions do not matter. It's potency. Here in 3D, we think scale and size, the bigger, the better. Not always. There's a potency and vibrational energy that sometimes the small can be much more powerful than the large. You can think and atomically, right? All right, so here we go. Just wanted to give you again this idea of the triad, the High Priestess. Now I'm bringing Isis, Sirius A star in Canis Major constellation. And I'm also going to call in Lyra Vega. Again, when you start looking at the galactic heritage, Lyra had both a strong male principle and an equal and opposite feminine. And Vega is connected more towards going within, finding all your answers through meditation, through embodiment, through attunement to, going in within you instead of looking for all the answers outside of you. Beautiful feminine archetypal energies. So I don't think this game with the High Priestess stays with just one star in the heaven. I would definitely play with this idea of the Vega star system as well. Okay, in closing, I wanted to go back to this triad again and say, I'm just looking at those three cards, the Fool, the Magician, and the High Priestess. The Fool is connected to Uranus. This is a transpersonal planet. It wasn't discovered till this last century, right? So, but here it is, it's transpersonal. It's the new beginning. So it's almost like this new soul comes in from far, far away into this, to this galaxy through the Fool, through Uranus, right? And then Mercury, the planet so close to the sun, orbiting so quickly, able to go through to heaven, to hell, and communicate what is found there. And then now here's the moon connected to the earth, who's circling, the moon is circling the earth while Mercury is circling the sun. But the beginning point really comes in through Uranus. I've heard many mystery school teachers point to Saturn. So track Saturn. And yes, okay, but look, if you follow the major arcana, what's up with Uranus? This is also the glyph for the Aquarian or the Aquarius zodiacal sign, the 11th house. This idea of so connected to the galactic, the future. We're moving into what's called the Aquarian age. So it's interesting how this energy is starting to, we're finding ways to speak about it in more of a quantum experience. Well, I want to thank you for listening and for joining me, because by sharing with you, I'm going through this kind of cathartic experience too. I'm not taking big notes. I'm just allowing myself to flow. That which wants to come forward, may it be. If you agree, if you don't agree, it's fine. It's really just kind of this game. In the end, it's what do you sense and tune into for truth and how you play this game. Is there a galactic connection between the High Priestess and any other star seed or star constellation in our heavens? It may even come from something far, farther away. But as we play in the game of duality and polarity, there is the male, there is the female, and there is all this beautiful other in between, right? This is where the bountiful creator creation happens. Thank you for listening. Consider really how Uranus may guide us in the near future as together we hold the idea of the magician, high priestess, and the fool. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time on the Ascension Playground. Bye for now.